Have you ever dealt with someone that made you feel so chosen, that mirrored you, that studied you, that seduced your wounds, and just when you felt safe, they turned cold? Today we're going to be deep diving Joe from You, but not only that, we're really going to look at the motivators behind a narcissist. What makes them tick? How did they end up like this? What's happening when they're really love bombing you? Do they know that they're abusing you? I'll be answering your questions that you sent in, and this really is going to be the most hard-hitting, comprehensive deep dive on narcissism and understanding them that you are going to find. I broke down narcissism a lot on my TikTok last year. A lot of those videos went viral, but I'm excited to have this full comprehensive video right here that is going to put them all in a line for you guys to understand. Before I dive in too much, I want to just say welcome back to my channel. My name is Julie Tice. I'm here to be your psychology wingwoman, helping you understand what is deeper behind the headlines, analyzing pop culture so that you can better understand the world and yourself. And we officially passed 1,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. I have been doing psychology for a long time. I've been doing these breakdowns for years, but YouTube is something that I am new to. So I am so thankful for you guys who are here on the beginning of the journey as I figure it out. And for this topic especially, I feel like I want to actually say my qualifications. I haven't done that in any of these videos yet, and some of you guys have asked. I had assumed that most of my audience would be following me over from my Instagram or my TikTok, but a lot of you guys are new here, which is so exciting for me to have a new audience and to be sharing this stuff on YouTube where the videos are even deeper, richer, more educational, and are going to teach you so much more. You guys have already asked, how do you know any of this stuff? I do have my bachelor's degree in psychology. I have my master's degree in psychology. I've worked as a researcher. I've worked as a behavioral specialist. And for the last 8 years, I have privately coached women from all over the world, working with probably over 1,000 clients. And I work with clients primarily on overcoming psychological addictions, letting go, healing old relationship patterns that don't serve them anymore, and becoming better, teaching them how to get out of a hole that they may feel like they can't escape. With all of that, I also have a lot of personal experience in this, especially on this topic of narcissism. I grew up in a broken home. I've been in abusive relationships. I've been in relationships with narcissists. And I think that is why so many of us have been drawn to the show You. And what this breakdown is really going to do is, yes, we're going to dive into Joe specifically. This video is much more about the Joe that you have probably dated. And what you're also going to learn in this video is how to not become the person that Joe goes looking for. How can you recognize the Joe in your life before you get caught up in the fantasy? If you've ever been love bombed, gaslit, or discarded, this video will hit uncomfortably close. So let's get into it. Unpacking the real psychology behind You, narcissism, fantasy, and emotional warfare, and what this does to your mind. I want to start first with the origin of the word narcissist. It's a cool story. It really applies, and a lot of people don't know about it. So the word narcissism comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus. And Narcissus was a beautiful but cruel man who rejected every admirer he had. So one day, the gods punished him for his vanity and coldness by making him fall in love with his own reflection in the water. He became obsessed with the image, unable to look away, until eventually he starved to death because he couldn't stop admiring his own image. And where his body fell, the flower Narcissus grew, which is a real flower. So what does this teach us? The very important part of this story is that Narcissus did not fall in love with himself. He fell in love with his reflection. You are going to see this pop up again and again as I talk about narcissism. We always get it wrong that narcissists, because they come across as really confident, we always get it wrong that narcissist is about an overinflation of self-love. There is no love here. That is why they create their false self, because of how much they actually hate themselves. It's also important to see that in this story, Narcissus couldn't touch or actually connect with his own image, just like narcissists can't actually emotionally bond. They can only idealize. And it also highlights of how their self-obsession leads to isolation and destruction. We might not see the narcissist dying by a lake, but they rot for the same reason, which is self-obsession over the truth. You might be wondering, wait a second, Joe is a psychopath, right? Because he's a serial killer. Why am I talking about narcissism right now if he is a psychopath? And when I say psychopath, I mean someone with antisocial personality disorder. Now, these two things can be combined when it comes to serial killers, but there is a distinction. Who I would say is actually a better example of antisocial personality disorder would be someone like Hannibal Lecter. This is really no empathy at all, versus someone like Joe, where there's very low empathy, but they still desire connection. And the reason why I'm also picking Joe for narcissist is because of what drives him. Joe is driven by deep shame, as all narcissists are. That is what drives the false self, where people with antisocial personality disorder, they don't feel shame. Joe also is very emotionally reactive. I'll get into this, but he lashes out every single time his ego is threatened, which is very characteristic of a narcissist. It's probably important to point out that not all narcissists are violent. They won't all kill you. but they probably are very likely to kill your self-worth and your self-esteem. So how is narcissism created in Joe, and how is it developed inside of a person? I want to also say a lot of this that I'm pulling from, and if you want to learn more, I would highly suggest the book Malignant Self-Love. It's by Sam Vaknin. He is a self-aware narcissist, and he's also a psychologist. So he writes it in a very similar way. I feel like how Joe self-narrates everything. It's a very similar, distinctive voice. And I give so much credit to how You was written. I actually think they got it very accurate. Joe's running script is just a loop of his coping mechanisms, of his justifications, of how he does no wrong. And narcissists are very talented at that. They can justify everything, including abusing you and hurting you. So what you need to know, what I wish I could teach everyone about narcissism, is that narcissism is a shame-based disorder. When we have these narcissists in our lives, they come to us and they look very sparkly, very hero complex, very self-assured, and very confident. We use the word narcissist wrong all the time. We see someone who's confident and we say, oh my gosh, they're such a narcissist. What we should do is see someone who fucking hates themselves and say, you're such a narcissist, because narcissism is the shame-based disorder. It develops from people not being able to cope with that shame. So let's look at Joe for an example. It is sad because these people weren't born monsters, they were made. As we see time and time again, their blueprint for what love looks like, for what their self-esteem is supposed to look like, for how much pain they're supposed to tolerate, comes to them very fucked up. So before Joe Goldberg ever loved a woman, he had to learn how to survive one. His mother was detached, distracted. She had violent men in and out of her life, and there was Joe to absorb it all. Most of these narcissists have a very deep mother wound. And people get really confused by this because sometimes they have dated a narcissist where they have a very odd relationship with their mother. They are too close with their mother, it seems. But that is, again, something a child should have never had to take on. A lot of the times when a narcissist is abusing and punishing a woman, he is punishing his mother through you. Because even if his mother looks like the overly attached, overly committed, she likely could not save herself from the men in her life that were hurting her. And then you might think, okay, that child should have grown up then hating men. Why do they hate women so much? Because the mother was supposed to protect him. So even though a lot of this time this violence was done by a man, it often gets morphed into this very misogynistic, absolute hatred towards women, aka hatred towards their mother, even if they come across like they are very adoring of their mother. I did a TikTok on Brian Laundrie and his mother. I would suggest you guys check that out because that one is interesting too. But in Joe's case, okay, he's a child. He is absorbing all of this. Abandonment, chaos, rejection. Before he even learned how to spell love, he learned to fear it. And this is another thing. A lot of these children are learning these things before we are even pre-verbal. And this is why childhood trauma is such a root of personality disorders, because when a child is unsafe, they don't grow a personality, they grow armor. This is their coping mechanism. And what the armor is with a narcissist is their false self. Because of this trauma, because of this hurt, they literally are fracturing from their real self. False self really serves as a protection for them. And I want to dive into this at the end of the video because people ask a lot, can a narcissist ever change? So it's important to remember how utilitarian their false self is. In other words, how much it serves them in all parts of their life. The false self is a grandiose, polished version of who they wish they were. Why? Because their true self is broken, it's filled with shame, and it is something they have buried deep down in them. That's why a narcissist doesn't really know who they are. It's also why a lot of narcissists lie. Everything is bigger than life. It has to be. And this motivates everything they do. I love this quote in Malignant Self-Love where Sam Vaknin talks about pretty much why he hates people. And this is why narcissists are so angry at you. When you feel like they are punishing you, they do fucking hate you. But he talks about how even though we can be moving in the same direction, so let's say we're chasing our dreams, he says you are running towards your dreams and I am running away. You are chasing dreams, they are fleeing from shame. You build a life, they build a performance. The false self is created as a coping mechanism, and so is narcissistic supply. What is narcissistic supply for Joe Goldberg? It is all the women he has dated. And this is how it is for most narcissists. And it's crazy then because people really think that their narcissist is a hopeless romantic, someone that loves them so much, someone who's just a little wounded and broken, but doing their absolute best to learn how to love. In a way, it might feel like you're powerful because when I say narcissistic supply, This is also their driving motivator. They need this to survive. It is literally a vampire with blood. But some people mistake this so much because they feel a sense of power. Oh, he's telling me he needs me to survive. And in a way, it is almost true. But it's not that the narcissist sees you. He's not like, I need Julie to survive, sure, for a moment, but he needs anyone. And there is a reason why narcissists pick people for supply, because supply is basically attention, admiration, validation. It can be obedience, fear, love. It's any reaction that reinforces their false self. So yes, technically, they could get this from work. It's why a lot of narcissists are workaholics. They could get it from philanthropy, from donating a lot of money, which we also see sometimes. So it's like, why can't narcissists just be like good people and get their supply that way? Why instead do they pick people who they ruin their lives, who they cause so much wreckage and damage? So many of us have abuse stories. Narcissism is such an interesting mental health disorder. It's pretty similar to Munchausen's by proxy, where the person who has it is much less affected than their victims. If you think of something like an eating disorder, depression, anxiety, that's not to say that family members aren't affected by that, but you are pretty much hurting yourself. Take any self-harm strategy, you are harming yourself. But something like narcissism, your whole victims end up being someone else. And narcissists leave a graveyard of that. As the same with someone who has Munchausen's by proxy. You are benefiting from this mental disorder. It is soothing your coping needs while you are leaving a severe victim. Think Gypsy Rose and her mother. Her mother was affected by Munchausen's by proxy, just like a narcissist is affected by narcissists. But their victims are the ones that end up in years of therapy, that end up so mentally fucked up. And that's why if you think you are going to survive a narcissist, get ready for a giant ass therapy bill. And back to my question, why do narcissists use people? The answer is so fucking sick. And I hope it keeps you up at night because we need a wake up call. Narcissists use people, they use lovers because they are the easiest form of supply. They literally take the least amount of work. All the work comes in the beginning. And then you rarely have to maintain it. That's what breadcrumbing is. That's why the narcissist love bombs you so much in the beginning, makes you believe in this fantasy, tells you everything they want to hear, and they can maintain you for years. I've seen people lose not just 1 year, but 5 years, 10 years, 20 years off of their life, surviving off of the breadcrumbs from the narcissist. And we let them. And why do they do it? It is not because they love you so much and they just can't let you go. It is because you are the easiest form of supply. If they were to do this in work, guess what? You have to keep working. You have to keep building your goals. That requires so much more work than a person who is addicted on the trauma bond and addicted off of the crumbs of love that the narcissist gives to you. So let's talk about what is happening when the narcissist, or Joe Goldberg in this case, falls in love. And I just want to say, I love the writing on You. I think they actually did a very accurate job. I love that they humanized Joe. I love that they used Penn Badgley. On one note, because my first viral series on TikTok, how I got started with all of this on social media, is I did the psychological breakdown on the Gossip Girl characters. So I did Blair and I did Serena and I did Chuck. And so now it feels like a full circle moment where we're here deep diving You. And I know some people are concerned with like Penn Badgley is very hot. And some people say that it is romanticizing serial killers because all these girls are like fawning over him. But here's where I think that that is accurate. We do that. We literally do that in real life. Not just seeing Zac Efron as Ted Bundy and Penn Badgley as this hopeless romantic serial killer. We do that with the narcissists in our own life. And Penn Badgley at the end of season 5 gives a beautiful monologue on how maybe we are the problem. And we are part of the problem. But after this video, you're going to be more educated, hopefully more awake, so that you stop doing this. You're going to understand how these patterns end up falling into your lap. I'm also going to talk about how you cannot be as easily manipulated. So like I said, Joe gives a pretty accurate depiction of what happens with love bombing. This is such a common question I get when I am coaching clients that you guys have also asked me in my social media comments. Did the narcissist actually love me? Because we see with Joe Goldberg, he doesn't just fall in love, he dives in head first. And it is something that looks like a dream to us. And this is where narcissists have a leg up on the general population, because so many of us, and I think especially women, we are waiting to be saved by our knight in shining armor. And that is partially how we've been conditioned. Think back to Disney and what we learned about your prince showing up and true love, and they are supposed to know you and see you and have this deep soulmate connection to you, and that's how you're supposed to know. And a lot of normal people people are freaking mediocre. And so this is also my rant for those mediocre people. You better step it up. In some ways, we can learn something from a narcissist here, because this is how narcissists trap you. It is sometimes the only time a girl feels like she is being swept off her feet and truly seen. It might be the first time that a man says that you are so different, that you are not like other girls. And that's what a narcissist does so well, is they do make you feel seen. But the problem is they aren't actually seeing you. They are studying you. They're reflecting back you to you. Let's look at Beck from season 1. Joe studies her social media. He watches her through a window. He memorizes her schedule. And to Beck, it feels like he just gets me. Notice how quickly Joe reflects her. He reads the poetry she likes. He uses her language. He learns what makes her tick, and that becomes so addicting. So many of us, and this is something that all these women have in common, no matter how different, are waiting for someone to see us. And we have Love. She tells him about her trauma, and suddenly Joe is trauma informed. And if you've ever dated a narcissist, you will know how at first they see their trauma and they ask you about their trauma. They want to know about it so they can weaponize it against you later on. And we see again how Joe morphs with Love. He becomes calm and emotionally intelligent. She says she wants something real. So he plays the anti-ghosting king. And again, do you see how they fill the holes inside of you? And they can do that, and we become susceptible because we are also missing something. The narcissist for sure is missing something, but we are too. A lot of clients that I work with, they can be smart, intelligent, have their degrees, but usually once we peel back the layers, we also realize that that point in their life, they were missing something. They were looking for something. They had those holes in their self-esteem, and it felt so good to be seen. That's why it becomes like a drug. And then we see Joe morph again with Maureen. She's strong. She has boundaries. She's a mother. And people think of themselves like that. A narcissist couldn't take advantage of me. I'm strong. I know better. I'm smart. It is why when you break up with a narcissist, people say all the time, I can't believe I let myself get there. I can't believe I accepted this. But just like a narcissist, Joe doesn't just fall in love. He becomes the exact man you want and need him to be. It's not genuine, it's adaptive. When I say Joe is changing for every woman, it's not real change. It's only on the surface. It is only the mask. That's what narcissists do. They wear masks that reflect you. But if you watch long enough, the mask cracks. In Malignant Self-Love, they talk about this, that a narcissist never really loves you. They love the role that they cast you in. So to answer the question, did the narcissist ever love you? Let me walk you through what is happening with the narcissist psychologically. They are genuinely missing a part of themselves. They are miserable. They know it deep inside. They are running away from their shame at all times. Because of this, they are trying to save themselves. They are trying to feel better. How do they do that? By formation of false self and through their supply. So when they meet you, their supply, there is a part of them that does fall in love, or a much better term to use than love, since love is built on mutual respect and should feel safe and patient and kind. And I should say a narcissist falls into obsession with you, and that obsession is genuine, because what is going on in their coping mechanism brain is that you are going to be the thing that finally saves them. Finally, they found it. That last person tricked them, betrayed them even, and was not it. But you are the glorious goddess sent from above that is going to change everything. And they have to study you, and they have to keep you. And they do feel that high, and they will drain their bank accounts to impress you. They love that fantasy. That is their drug. That is the idealization phase. That is where you also, oh, that feels good to be the narcissist idealization. But actually not very much to a healthy person. A healthy person with a secure attachment, something feels off about that. But a lot of the times the people who are most attached, most addicted to the narcissist are people who also learn, I have to prove myself for love. Love is a finite resource. And if I am good enough and if I do enough, then I can have it. Also, the people who end up dating a narcissist very often have had narcissistic parents, have had abusive parents, toxic parents. They also have their own toxic blueprint of love, because we shouldn't be so obsessed and high with being idealized, because that shit feels really good, especially if you hate yourself and especially if you're lost. So in the beginning, everyone's happy and it's so intense. This lays down the groundwork for the trauma bond, because what happens next is you show that you are human, and heaven forbid that you do, because in that moment, you just shattered the narcissist's fantasy. And when the narcissist's fantasy and their false self is shattered, you will experience narcissistic rage and devaluation. And when a narcissist starts to hate you and devalues you, cheats on you, hurts you, they really are angry at you. They feel like because you show that you are human, as all people are, you cannot go through this relationship and not be human. And that is the difference between actual genuine love. Someone who actually genuinely loves you understands that you are human. They are going to understand your flaws and they are going to love you through it. A narcissist only loves you so long as you play into their role. And when you stop, hell hath no fury. We see this very much in season 5 with Kate falling from her pedestal. He wanted to do everything to protect her. He loved her, idealized her, and then she went against his false self. That is threatening to a narcissist. And so what does the narcissist have to do? You no longer can be supply. So that is when the discard happens. In the discard, they might physically leave you, literally have a new supply right away. And we definitely see moments of that with someone like Justin Bieber. There was never a moment where there wasn't a woman replaced. He broke up with Selena, was married to Haley in 2 months. They gotta have their supply. And as they are emotionally punishing you, depending on your childhood wounds, and if you spot this and if you know what's going on, you might take it and say, oh my God, remember, I am someone who I come from, I have to prove myself for love. Okay, so I will just work harder. I have to get back to that beginning when it was so perfect and we loved each other and everything was butterflies and rainbows and he looked at me like I was the most important thing in the world. I have to get back to that drug that they cemented in you. So what happens for you? You try harder, you stay longer, and you accept less and less. This is how people go years and years and years living off of breadcrumbs. This is how a trauma bond develops. They become the person that breaks you, but when they finally give you that breadcrumb, that dopamine high hit, you are so addicted and you have to have it again. You are literally the rat pushing the lever, waiting for your dopamine hit. You are literally the person in Vegas pushing the button, hoping to hit the jackpot. But instead of waiting for your cheese or your jackpot win, you are spinning the wheel of abuse, waiting for it to finally land on the little tiny crumb of affection and thinking, oh, I won for the day. I got my dopamine hit for the day. So you guys, Joe doesn't love these women. He needs them. Their attention, their praise, their belief in him. That is what keeps him emotionally alive. But once the supply gets shaky, he spirals. He goes into narcissistic rage. It starts as devotion, turns into jealousy, possessiveness, surveillance, control. And if you confuse that for love, congratulations, that's exactly what they fucking want. And how do you know if you have fallen sick to the illness? Well, your mood will start to depend on if they praise you or not, if they notice you or not. And that is the thing, the sadness that I see, the real loss is the people who stay. So what is going on in your brain? I think they actually do a great job of Bronte in this, because what starts to happen as the devaluation starts, or as we start to see some of their true selves, is cognitive dissonance switches in. So cognitive dissonance is basically in your brain, you have two conflicting things. I love this man, he's an abuser. So one part of your brain says, no, wait, like I have built an identity for myself that like, I don't date abusers. I'm a strong woman. I have boundaries. I have all of that. So it can't be the fact that I am dating both an abuser and I am a strong woman with boundaries and independent, and I'm smarter than these other stupid women who fall into abusive relationships. So your brain, both of these can't be true. So what does the brain do? The brain doesn't say, yeah, you are kind of being a dumb bitch and you're being manipulated. No, instead the brain says, oh, then he actually must not be abusive. The brain will make your actions and your beliefs align. That doesn't mean in a healthy way. What it means instead is coping mechanisms like denial will kick in, justification will kick in. You see it where Joe literally kills someone in front of Bronte and she goes, well, you made him violent. He wouldn't have done that. He was protecting me. She can't hold this belief that she is falling in love with a person who is abusing her, who is a bad man. She has to instead believe that everyone else is not seeing the situation for what it is. It is them against the world and you aren't seeing it correctly. His exes were the problem. Everyone else is the problem. You become so brainwashed in this. This is why when you are in a narcissistic relationship, you lose yourself. You come out of it and you can't even recognize who you are. The brain literally rewires. It has to rewire for survival. I love the quote at the ending that Bronte says to Joe, where she says, the fantasy of a man like you is how we cope with the reality of you. And that is so accurate. And there were parts in season 5 where I was like, oh my God, this is like so cheesy. Like, shut up. It is not this fairy tale romance. And then I was like, actually, I don't know if it was intentional, but I'm like, this is kind of brilliant writing, because that is what people do, is they convince themselves it's the fantasy. both the narcissist and their victim. Joe's running monologue is always his coping mechanisms kick in. It is always a justification for why he does what he does. And denial is a coping mechanism. And you will see it pop up not just in the narcissist, in yourself again and again. And you feel like, by the way, and you look out in the world and you're like, God, everyone is not in reality. At least that is how I feel most of the time. You have to remember, denial is a coping mechanism. Justification is a coping mechanism. People don't want to deal with shame. They don't want to deal with their cognitive dissonance. They don't want to deal with the fact that they are dating someone who abuses them and hurts them. So they create a whole other fantasy. These people really are living in Delulu la la land. And listen, you can do that. You are allowed to. You are allowed to date the narcissist. You are allowed to stay with your abuser. It is up to you to decide how much you value truth, because truth is very painful and very hard to see. You have to decide that that is important to you, because you can hold on to this relationship, and the cost of that is yourself. The cost of that is detaching from reality. You have to make it work. And if that is worth it to you, keep it. But I do believe in the clients that come to me and they say that they want help. I always say to them that one day the pain won't be worth the pleasure, because we do get pleasure from being with these people. There is a benefit to being seen, to being in your fantasy, in your story. And that is usually ways that you have coped with your own past wounds. You're allowed to stay there. Not everyone is strong enough to get out. And I will never tell someone that there is no reason to stay, because all of our actions for why we do, there is a reason behind it. And the truth is hard. But I will say, if you believe that there is better for you and that you can get out, I absolutely loved the speech that Marianne gave to Bronte when they were sitting on the floor of the bookstore. That whole monologue is so accurate. What happens to us is we really think, I am smarter than those other girls. It is different with me. We have to make ourselves believe that. But something else that she says is that so long as you are alive, it is not too late to leave. The stages of a narcissist loving you are idealize, devalue, discard. And that shit is fucking painful. Idealize in the narcissist mind is, you are my dream. The devalue is, you're not who I thought you were. And the discard is, I never loved you. And we see that with Joe. He pulls back, he nitpicks, he gets cold. If you've ever seen the narcissistic stare, they will look at you with disdain. And suddenly you're too emotional, you're too needy, you're too much. And again, you are also attracted to the narcissist because of the hole inside yourself. And you guys, I say this all not to victim blame. There is no point to hear all of this and add to the shame that is this narcissistic puddle and think, why did I stay? I hate myself so much for staying. That is not going to help you heal. But what can help you heal is for you to start recognizing the patterns inside yourself. I love what TikTok and social media and that this information being accessible has done for us for identifying patterns. But on the flip side, I am seeing way too much of people saying, well, my ex was a narcissist and the next one was a narcissist and the next one. And I believe you, they might all be. But at one point, do you sit and ask yourself, and what am I doing to attract that? No one deserves to be abused. You could be the worst demon on earth and you don't deserve what a narcissist puts you through. But if you want to start having power back in your decisions, it is time to look at why you make those decisions. Why is your abuse tolerance for someone so high? People always ask, well, why does a narcissist come back then? Because you let them come back. And that should be the part that you start to ask yourself, not, why are they lying? Why are they cheating? Why do I hate myself so much that I let them cheat and lie and still tell them that it's okay? And people will ask then, okay, so then why does the narcissist come back and they pretend like nothing ever happened? You just let them. You told the narcissist, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay. And you might be saying, no, I didn't. I sat there and I said, you will never treat me like this again. But then you did. And you have to understand, you let the narcissist go back to their fantasy. What can you watch out for so that you aren't as easily manipulated? Well, here is the pattern that a narcissist looks for that also all of Joe's love interests have in common. They all seem like very different women, but at the core, they were all searching for a sense of identity. They were isolated or emotionally unanchored, and they were empathetic and wounded. It sucks to say, but you weren't chosen for your light. You were chosen for your reflection of their needs. A narcissist loves you only as much as they see you as an extension of themselves. And I really want to touch on this when it comes to parenting, because Kate said it when Joe was fighting for her son, saying, "You will never take my son away from me," which we see in narcissistic parents all the time. And people get really confused. They're like, why do they want to fight for their son so much when they don't even want to see them, or they really haven't loved them, they haven't been in their life? But when custody comes into question, the narcissist wants full custody. And Kate says you don't love him, you only love him as an extension of yourself. So what does that mean? The extension of self means a narcissist does not see you as a separate person, your own autonomous person with your own thoughts, identity, and needs. And children are highly susceptible to this because it is very easy for a narcissist to project everything they want onto a child. And I do always get so scared and so sad when I have friends and they get pregnant by the narcissist, and I've heard this before where they'll say, yeah, but I think he'll be a really great dad. Or it's in the very beginning of the child's life, you know, he abuses me, he treats me like shit, but he will be a great dad. That child cannot speak yet. That child does not have their own voice. And if you have had a narcissistic parent, you know, guess what? Yeah, you abused my mom and you inevitably abused me. And that narcissistic parent will sure make you feel like shit for that. Be like, well, we used to be best friends. You used to be so good. You used to be so easy to take care of, until you decided to develop your own voice. And a narcissist can't stand that. You are supposed to be an extension of them. So yes, they might fight for their child because it serves their false self. But again, they also don't fully love the child. It is this collapse of ego boundary issues, which a narcissist really struggles with. They do almost see you as a limb of theirs. They really struggle distinguishing themselves from others. And that bleeds over into relationships. Once you start having needs, they can't even believe it. Think about this from an interview with Jeffrey Dahmer. He said part of the reason, basically why he was experimenting on the people that he killed, he was trying to make them almost zombies so they would stay with him, so that they would be awake, but so that they wouldn't need anything. He said it would really piss him off, aka put him in this narcissistic rage when they started saying, but I want to leave, when they started voicing something that was different from what he had in his fantasy. So what he said he wanted was for those people to stay with him forever. He wanted that companionship and partner. But the second those people needed a glass of water or to go home, that pissed him off. So he said he was injecting them in their brain so that they would just stay there and do whatever he wanted, and that he could keep them. And narcissists really are the same way. Maybe they don't go to the point where they're injecting something in their brain, but think of how angry they get at you when you have to leave them, when you're doing something else, when you're going out with your friends and not with them. And this is how people in narcissistic relationships lose themselves and lose their identity. You begin to walk on eggshells to be enough for them. You're punished for your autonomy and rewarded for your compliance. And you start to then think that your worth is based on how well you meet their emotional needs. I asked you guys to send me in questions on my Instagram before I filmed this video. So I want to answer those because you guys sent in really good ones. And if you aren't already, make sure you follow me on Instagram so that you can see more bite-sized videos like this, follow along with me in my real life, and also you can send in questions where I'll answer in my next deep dive. Also, let me know in the comments, what deep dive do you want to see after this? I kind of love how this one was phrased. It says, should a narcissist just be banished to a remote island, or can they develop empathy? But I also see this one asked again and again of, can my narcissist change, right? We want to believe that they can change. And remember when I said at the beginning of the video to remember how the false self develops, because that is their coping mechanism. That is the thing that keeps them safe. So the reason why most narcissists never change is because why would they? Narcissism is something that they build and they created that perfectly fits in their life. It gives them the sense of purpose. It gives them a self-esteem. It makes them feel better, way more than changing would. This is why I said, you know, narcissism and Munchausen's by proxy are very different than the other mental illnesses too, is because of how much the other mental illnesses really affect your life. Someone with borderline personality disorder, yes, they might be very self-destructive in relationships, but that destruction hurts them very badly. It is usually enough for them to learn how to change or at least manage their symptoms. Same with anxiety and depression. People are usually motivated to change that. It's really affecting their life. Narcissism, in the sick mind, in a lot of ways is enhancing their life. So what motivation would they have to change? We do see some narcissists want to change when they have a complete ego death and narcissistic collapse. That's basically where their fantasy finally shatters, where something happens that is either such a significant loss or so damaging to them, where they are starting to finally see the reality of the world. But for most, they just kind of want to run back to this perfect coping mechanism, this perfect thing that they created that is theirs, and they can just keep hopping to new supply. And that's why a lot of narcissists don't change. And for as far as like, how can I help them change? You can't, and you are going to be the one that loses in this situation. Someone else wrote in, why does Joe blame his girlfriends for his actions? He says a lot, look what you made me do. Yes, that is Joe's coping mechanism. He justifies every single action. A narcissist doesn't take accountability because it would threaten their false self. It can't be their fault. Remember, they are always running away from shame. If they had to actually take accountability and look at their actions, you are then forcing them to confront that shame and their true self that they have spent years trying to bury. They are going to do anything to not confront that. And that's why you see all of their mental gymnastics, all of the ways that they twist their words so that they don't have to deal with their own reality. The next one is, does anyone ever really have a hold on the narc emotionally? I love this one. It goes back to that conversation that Bronte and Marianne were having on the bookstore, where there is a part of you and part of everyone that says, well, I'm not going to become like that. I'm smarter than all these women who went through this and came out emotionally damaged. And again, that's our cognitive dissonance kicking in. That is us justifying the reasons why we should stay. Sometimes we convince ourselves that they're not a narcissist. Sometimes we convince ourselves, but I am powerful enough to deal with the narcissist. But the reason why you'll never win is because you have to understand you are not in a relationship with a narcissist. Narcissists don't have relationships. They have power dynamics. You cannot be in the relationship with the narcissist without entering in this power dynamic, and they are always going to win over you. If you are a loving, empathetic, normal person, even if you say to yourself, I'm going to turn that part of myself off, I bet you are going to be the one walking on eggshells. They have learned from the beginning of your relationship the exact way to erode your self-esteem. Really, the only way I've ever found of even having slight power of the narcissist is you have to say, I am okay without them loving me. And I think that's great. If you feel like you can't fully escape the narcissist, maybe the narcissist is your parent, or maybe you aren't in the position where you can leave the narcissist. Where they'll always loop us into the games is usually because part of us does want to earn their love. And I think it'd be very few people who could look me in the eye and say, no, I genuinely don't care if I have their love. So no, you won't love a narcissist and walk away untouched. You will walk away wondering where you went. You guys, thank you for joining me on this video. There is so much more that I could say on this topic. If you are sitting here after this and you want help with your personal situation, you can book a one-on-one session with me. I will link how to do that down in the show notes. But if you are tuned in and you want to keep learning and growing, make sure you like and subscribe. If you haven't already, there are more videos where this came from. Let me know also down below, what do you want me to break down next? What topic? What celebrity? Where can we deep dive so that we can learn more about ourselves? Thank you guys for being here, and I will see you guys in the next one.